He thought silence would finally drown the noise in his head. He thought a rusted fishing town, half forgotten at the bottom edge of Louisiana, was far enough from the desert and its ghosts. Ethan Cole was wrong about a lot of things. What he wasn't wrong about was the dog. Evening settled over Bay Briar like a damp blanket. The Gulf air was heavy with salt and diesel, the sky the color of old brews. Neon from a half-broken bait shop sign flickered over the water, smearing red and blue across the slow-moving waves. The old amusement pier groaned with every lazy slap of tide. Most of its rides were long gone. Only a skeleton Ferris wheel and a row of dead food stands remained, rising out of the water like a graveyard of good intentions. That was where Ethan stood, hands buried in the pockets of his faded hoodie, boots planted on warped planks. 37, ex-Army medic, chest full of scars nobody could see. He watched the horizon like it might explode at any moment. On the radio clipped to his belt, a voice crackled, static drowned. "Cole, you still out there? Coast Guard says that tropical depression's picking up. Ivy might scrape us tonight after all." Ethan thumbed the button without looking away from the water. "Copy. I'll lock up the pier and head in." "You know the drill," the voice replied. "You see kids messing around on the docks, run them off. I don't need another lawsuit." Ethan clipped the radio back, jaw tight. He'd taken the night security job because it was quiet and paid cash. Nobody asked where he'd been before, or why he woke up some nights choking on sand that wasn't there. A humid wind swept across the bay, carrying the smell of tar and shrimp and something else. Rain on the way, sharp and metallic. Out beyond the pier, the dark smear of clouds was growing teeth. Storms coming. Good, he thought. Storms meant fewer people. Fewer people meant fewer questions. He turned to check the padlocks along the pier's edge, his movements automatic. Chain, latch, twist, tug. The kind of simple, precise work that kept his hands busy and his mind from drifting back to places where sand turned to glass under fire. He had just reached the last gate when he heard it. A thin, strangled sound threaded through the wind. At first, he thought it was metal whining, or some loose piece of siding catching the gusts. Bay Briar was full of noises like that. Rust groaning, ropes creaking, the occasional drunk shouting at the tide. But this was different. Short, sharp, desperate. A bark. Ethan froze. The hair along his neck rose. The sound came again, swallowed quickly by the wind from somewhere beneath the pier. Instinct moved his legs before anything else did. He jogged to the edge, kneeling to peer through the gaps in the planks. Beneath him, the pylons vanished into black water. A tangle of old crab traps and bleached driftwood floated in the shadows. Light from the bait shop sign sputtered over the eye waves. Another bark, higher this time. Panicked. Ethan scanned the darkness, eyes narrowing. There, wedged between two barnacle-crusted beams just above the waterline, was a flash of tan and black. A dog. A German shepherd. The animal was chained to a rotting support post. The padlock rusted, the chain far too short. Each wave lifted its body, slamming it back against barnacles and concrete. The dog's front paws scrabbled against slick algae, claws scraping uselessly. Lightning flickered way off over the Gulf, far enough to be silent, close enough to paint the scene in brief white. "Who the hell?" Ethan breathed. The dog's eyes found him. Even at that distance they were clear, copper bright, burning with a stubborn, feral will not to let go. Something sharp twisted in his chest. Those eyes? He'd seen eyes like that before, under different skies, in a place where heat came from blast waves instead of southern humidity. The next wave crashed harder, slamming the dog sideways. It yelped, the sound ragged, then went back to clawing for purchase. Ethan didn't think. Training took over. He ran for the narrow service ladder, bolted to the side of the pier. Rust flaked under his palms as he descended, boots hitting each rung in quick succession. The wind funneled under the structure, louder down here, a hollow howl. Cold, greasy water surged around his calves as he waded along the barnacle-slick beams. The chain linking the dog to the post was thick, the kind you'd use to keep a boat from drifting, or to make sure something never got away. "Easy," Ethan muttered. His voice came out lower, calmer than he felt. "Easy, big guy. I've got you." The dog bared its teeth, a warning growl rolling out of its chest. It was soaked to the bone, fur plastered to lean muscle. Its breath came in harsh, shuddering pulls. The collar at its neck was cutting into skin rubbed raw. Ethan lifted both hands, palms out. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dog's gaze flicked to his hands, then back to his face. Another wave hit, shoving them both into the pylon. Pain sparked across Ethan's shoulder. He gritted his teeth and grabbed the chain, fingers finding the padlock by feel. He yanked. It didn't budge. He drew the pocket knife from his belt. The blade wasn't big, but it was sharp. He jammed it into the rusted hinge, bracing his shoulder against the post. The dog snarled again, snapping, but not at him. At the thing holding it. Metal screamed. Another wave hit, water up to Ethan's thighs. The knife slipped. His knuckles slammed into barnacles, skin tearing open. Hot blood mingled with cold bay water. "Come on!" he growled through his teeth. "Come on!" The hinge gave with a brittle snap. The chain dropped into the water with a splash, slack and heavy. The dog lurched forward, paws skidding. For a terrible second, Ethan thought it would go under and not come back up. He grabbed its scruff with both hands, yanking the animal toward him. "You're okay?" he grunted. "You're okay? I've got you." The dog twisted, scrambling, claws ripping his forearms. It wasn't trying to get away. It was trying not to drown. They stumbled together toward the ladder. Ethan pushed, hauled, shoved, shoving 80-plus pounds of half-panicked muscle up ahead of him. The dog found its own purchase halfway and scrambled the rest, disappearing over the pier's lip in a tangle of wet fur and sliding paws. Ethan climbed after it, lungs burning. On the pier, the shepherd stood braced, sides heaving, chain still dragging from its collar like a dead snake. Rain began in earnest now, fat drops splattering across the boards. Up close, Ethan could see the animal was younger than he'd thought, maybe 3-4 years. Old enough to be fully grown, young enough that its eyes hadn't dulled yet. Those eyes tracked him warily as he approached. The dog's head dipped, not submissive, not quite, but like it was measuring him. "You're a mess," Ethan said softly. The dog huffed out a breath, almost like a scoff. He reached for the collar slowly. The shepherd's muscles bunched, ready to spring, but it didn't bite. Ethan's fingers brushed cold metal. He froze. There, stamped into the steel tag hanging from the collar, were 4 letters and 2 numbers he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Rex 07. The world tilted. In his mind, everything shifted. Heat instead of humidity, sand instead of water, the air thick with dust and burning fuel. A street in Fallujah, a screaming radio, a dog with the same eyes dragging a bleeding man behind a half-collapsed wall, shrapnel embedded in its own side. Rex. But Rex had died in that blast. The report had been clear. Mortally wounded K9, remains unrecoverable. Condolences issued, handlers debriefed, file closed. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself back into the present. Tag numbers could be reused. Dogs could be renamed. This wasn't the other Rex. Couldn't be. Still, his fingers trembled as they traced the worn numbers. "Who put this on you?" he whispered. The dog tilted its head, as if the question mattered. There was another tag hooked behind the first. Civilian Rabies Vaccination, Bay Briar Veterinary Clinic, with a phone number and a single name stamped in small letters, Rex. The same. Thunder rumbled out over the water. "Okay," Ethan said finally. "Rex it is." The dog blinked once, slowly, as if accepting a fact it had known long before he said it. The storm that was supposed to just scrape Bay Briar decided sometime after midnight that it wanted to stay. By the time Ethan pulled his pickup toward the only bar still open near the shrimp docks, the rain was coming sideways, driven by winds that made the power lines hum. Palmettos bent low, fronds thrashing. Rex sat in the passenger seat, damp fur filling the cab, with that particular smell only a wet dog has, earthy and alive. He'd hesitated about taking him anywhere, but leaving him chained to some stranger's idea of home wasn't an option. The address on the rabies tag had led to an empty lot. The old trailer burned out, police tape fluttering uselessly in the wind. No people, no lights, just the blackened skeleton of something that used to be. "Guess you're with me for now," Ethan had murmured. Rex had met his gaze, steady and unflinching, then hopped into the truck like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now, as Ethan pulled into the gravel lot behind McGinty's, the radio on the dash spat out the latest from NOAA. Tropical storm Ivy has strengthened unexpectedly and is now projected to make a more direct landfall near the lower Louisiana coast. Residents in low-lying areas of Terrebonne and surrounding parishes are advised to prepare for potential levee, overtopping, and flash flooding. Ethan killed the engine. "This town never takes anything seriously until it's underwater," he muttered. Rex watched him, ears pricked. He wore a makeshift bandage around his front leg now, a white strip torn from one of Ethan's old t-shirts. "You're staying here," Ethan said. "I'm just grabbing supplies and checking in with Ray." Rex stared at him. "That is not up for debate, soldier." The dog's ears flattened briefly at the word soldier, then lifted again. He huffed, turned in a circle on the bench seat, and lay down, though his eyes stayed locked on Ethan like a tether. Inside McGinty's, the air was thick with stale beer and fried shrimp. The TV over the bar showed bright swirls of radar sliding closer to the coastline, the anchor's tie flapping in some distant wind as he pointed at streaks of red. Sheriff Ray Daughtry leaned over the counter, hat off, wiping rain from his mustache. In his 40s, built like one of the live oaks along the highway, he held the easy authority of someone used to people listening. "You look like hell, Cole," he said as Ethan approached. "Storm not giving you enough of a bath out there?" "Pulled a dog out from beneath the pier," Ethan replied. "Somebody chained him up under there. Tag says Rex. Any idea whose he is?" Ray's brows knit. "Only Rex I know is the shepherd the ward kid's been talking about. They've been fostering him for the clinic, but Lila would skin whoever tried to drown that dog." Lila Ward, ER nurse. The name flicked something in Ethan's memory. Dark eyes, quick hands. The only person in town who'd looked him square in the face that first week at the VA clinic and said, "You're not fine, you're quiet." "She's still working nights at the hospital?" Ethan asked. "Double shift, far as I know." Ray narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Her dog might have decided he prefers drowning to whoever had him last." Ray swore under his breath. "Ivy turns, levees get dicey, hospital's gonna be slammed. Last thing she needs is to lose that dog. She and her boy are attached." Her boy? Ethan hadn't known about a boy. He pushed the thought aside. "I'll get him to her once the road's calm," he said. "In the meantime, you need hands? If this storm hits the way they're saying..." Ray gave him a look that weighed and measured. "Last time you volunteered, you ended up fixing half the town's sandbag wall by yourself," the sheriff said. "You sure you're up for another round of heroics?" "I'm not a hero," Ethan said flatly. "Never met one who thought he was," Ray replied. They went over basics: volunteer muster at the high school gym if things went sideways, emergency shelter at the church, sheriff's office manning the phones until they went down. Ethan took a stack of bottled water and a bag of dog food, ignoring Ray's raised brow. "For Rex," he said. Outside, Rex's head popped up the moment Ethan opened the truck door. His tail thumped once against the seat when he saw the bag in Ethan's hand. "You're not staying long," Ethan reminded him. "We find your people, you go home." Rex stared at him with a look that said plainly, "We'll see." The first siren wailed at 2:07 a.m. Ethan was lying on his couch in his tiny stilt house on the back edge of the bayou, still in his clothes. Rain drumming the roof so hard, it sounded like someone was pouring gravel. The power had flickered and then gone, leaving only the dull glow of his battery lantern on the coffee table. Rex lay on the floor beside him, breathing slow and steady, his head resting on Ethan's boot. At the sound of the siren, a distinct rising wail not used for anything but levee breach, Rex's head snapped up. His ears went sharp. A low growl crawled out of his chest. Ethan was already sitting up, reaching for his phone. No service. "Of course," he muttered. The siren cut, then wailed again, closer this time, echoing weirdly through the heavy air. Rex paced to the door, nails clicking, then back to Ethan. He whined, short and urgent. "Easy," Ethan said. "We don't know what..." He stopped. The floor beneath his bare feet vibrated faintly. Not from thunder, from something heavier. Dull, distant thuds, like someone hauling trucks where no trucks should be at this hour, with this water. He moved to the window, peering through rain-streaked glass. Out beyond the mangroves, where the levee curved to protect the oldest part of town, he saw it. A line of headlights where there should have been none. Not emergency vehicles, no blue flashes, just 3 sets of low yellow beams moving along the skinny maintenance road atop the levee. "What are you idiots doing up there?" he breathed. The storm threw another sheet of rain against the house. In the flicker of lightning, he saw something else. Men silhouetted against the levee embankment, hunched shapes moving with a strange, hurried precision. One knelt, doing something near the base of a sandbag wall. The hair on Ethan's arms lifted. Rex growled again, louder this time, pressing his nose to the door. "Yeah," Ethan said softly. "I see it too." He pulled on his boots and grabbed his keys. The pistol in the top drawer of his dresser made its way into the waistband of his jeans without him really noticing the motion. Rain hit him like a wall when he shoved the door open. Within seconds, he was soaked. Rex rode shotgun again, body tense, muzzle pressed to the windshield as they bumped down the flooded road toward the levee access. Baybrier's main drag was eerily empty. Storefront windows boarded, sandbags stacked. A single patrol car rolled slow near the church, lights spinning red in the sheets of rain. Ethan killed his headlights 2 blocks from the levee and coasted the rest of the way, engine low. "You stay," he told Rex. "I mean it." Rex's response was to lean closer to the glass, fogging it with his breath. Ethan slipped out into the dark. The levee loomed ahead, a long, low ridge of man-made earth straining to keep the bayou from reclaiming what it once owned. The maintenance path up its side was a muddy mess. Ethan moved with the care of a man who'd crossed worse terrain under fire. The closer he got, the clearer the sounds became. Voices straining over the wind. "Hurry the hell up! You said nobody would see us. Cut it there, not so deep." Ethan's stomach turned to ice. He crested the levee and dropped flat, chest pressed to the wet grass. Below him, on the protected side, 3 men in slickers and ball caps were clustered around a section of sandbags. One held a flashlight in his mouth, beam jittering. Another was slicing into the plastic lining with a box cutter. The third man, taller, stood a little apart. His slicker hood was back despite the rain. Lightning gave Ethan a brief, crystal-clear look at his face. Mayor Dennis Crawley. Ethan nearly laughed at the sheer stupidity of the universe. Crawley, who had spent the last month on TV, assuring everyone the levee upgrades were state-of-the-art and nothing to worry about, was standing in a storm deliberately weakening the only thing keeping Baybrier dry. "For the last time," the mayor snapped, voice almost lost in the wind, "you make it look like the storm did it, not like somebody took a saw to it. Insurance doesn't pay out if they smell sabotage." "Boss!" one of the men shouted back. "This is crazy. If this gives in the wrong spot, it'll give where we planned," Crawley snapped. "The old docks, the condemned housing, FEMA'll come in with fresh money, and my brother's company will rebuild this whole shoreline with condos. You want to go back to fixing boat motors for chump change? Be my guest." The man with the box cutter hesitated. Ethan saw the angle of his shoulders, the small slump of shame. Crawley stepped closer, voice dropping, fierce even in the rain. "We're not sinking the whole town," he hissed. "Just shaving. A little off the top. The old levee should have been fixed years ago. They didn't call for a special election when they cut your daddy's benefits, did they? This is how we get ours back. By drowning everyone else?" The words were out of Ethan's mouth before he realized he'd spoken. The 3 men spun. The flashlight beam swung up, blinding him briefly. His pistol wasn't in his hand. It was still at his back, safety on. He hadn't wanted a gun for this. He'd wanted answers. Now he had both problems. "Who's there?" Crawley barked. "Show yourself!" Lightning flared again. In its harsh light, Ethan saw their faces. One he recognized from the bait shop, another from the auto parts store. Men with kids, men with mortgages. Men who'd convinced themselves this wasn't what it was. He pushed himself to his feet, rain running into his eyes. "Could have picked a better night to commit a felony," Ethan said. "Weather's not great for plausible deniability." "Coal," Crawley spat. "Figures the town stray'd be skulking around." "Funny," Ethan replied. "I was thinking the same about you." One of the other men, a stocky guy with an oil company logo half hidden under his slicker, shifted his weight, nervous. "We don't have to make it a thing, Dennis. He doesn't have to." Crawley's hand moved. Ethan's training screamed. He dropped again as the mayor drew a pistol from inside his slicker. The The shot went high, lost in thunder. Mud splattered Ethan's face. "Get him!" Crawley shouted. The two men lunged awkwardly up the slope. Ethan rolled, boots sliding, hands finding purchase on wet grass. He didn't want this. Didn't want the taste of adrenaline in his mouth again, the narrowing of vision, the echo of his own breathing too loud in his ears. But the levee behind them shuddered under the weight of the storm, and beyond it, out of sight, but close, too close, was the cluster of low houses where Lila Ward lived with her son, where the church stood, where the high school gym waited to become a shelter if the water rose. He couldn't walk away. He hadn't that night in Fallujah either. He hadn't saved them then. He wasn't failing a second time. He dove sideways, sliding down the seaward slope of the levee, pistol finally in his hand. The first man reached him, grabbing for his arm. Ethan twisted, using the man's momentum to throw him into the mud. The second swung his flashlight like a club. It glanced off Ethan's shoulder, pain flaring. Crawley fired again, the muzzle flash a harsh orange bloom. Ethan's world shrank to angles and inches, bodies and bad footing. He didn't see the truck until it was too late. Its headlights suddenly lit the top of the levee, bright and too close. Tires spun, slinging mud. Someone shouted. In the confusion, the truck skidded, fishtailing along the narrow ridge. The levee wall groaned. There was a sound like the earth itself tearing. Sandbags buckled. The entire section sagged inward as water slammed against the weak point they'd cut. Ethan had just enough time to think, "This is how it starts," before the wall gave. Water exploded through the breach, a white, roaring wall taller than a man. It hit them with the force of a freight train. Ethan's pistol flew from his hand. The world became chaos, cold, crushing, blinding. Up and down ceased to exist. He slammed into something hard, pain burning along his ribs. His lungs locked. He fought for air and got only liquid. In the boiling dark, somewhere between the broken levee and the flooded bayou, a single thought pierced the panic. Not like this. Not drowning in somebody else's mess. Something slammed into his shoulder, teeth closed around his jacket, hard enough to bruise. For a moment, his fight response flared, reaching for an enemy that wasn't there. Then came the smell, even underwater. Wet dog, fear, and something wild. Rex. The pressure on his collarbone grew as the dog kicked, hauling him toward a direction Ethan couldn't see. Instinct belatedly caught up. He stopped thrashing, let himself be pulled. His hand found fur and held on. They broke the surface together in a froth of debris and foam. Ethan coughed, choking, dragging in a ragged breath before a wave slapped his face again. Lights flashed in the distance, harsh and spinning, blue and red and white. Sirens wailed. Someone yelled his name, distant and thin. Rex's paws churned, muscles straining as he kept Ethan's head above water. The current fought them with every inch. It wanted them closer to the bayou's main channel, where the sucking pull of the tide would do the rest. "Easy, buddy," Ethan gasped, fingers fisted in the dog's scruff. "Easy, I've got you." But it was the other way around. Debris slammed past, broken boards, a trash can, something that might have been a cooler. There was a low, tearing sound as another section of levee gave, widening the gap. Rex adjusted, angling his body, pushing against the current, not with panic, but with grim, deliberate effort. Ethan led him, forcing his own limp body into that line. Ahead, between two half-submerged cypress trees, a shape loomed. A dock, warped and half-rotten, but still anchored. Lights from a nearby house cast a dim glow across its surface. "Almost," Ethan rasped. Rex barked once, a hoarse, bubbling sound, then surged forward. They slammed into the dock hard enough to make white spark in Ethan's vision. He grabbed for the edge, fingers scraping splinters. Rex clawed at the boards beside him, teeth never leaving Ethan's jacket. Hands appeared, reaching down. A voice, sharp with fear and authority, cut through the roar. "Got him! Hang on, I've got him! Ethan, don't you dare let go!" Lila Ward's face hovered above him, dark curls plastered to her cheeks, eyes wide with rain and terror. Behind her, smaller hands clutched the railing, her son, Jamie, pale and shaking. "Mom, the dog. Get the dog." Lila and someone else, a neighbor maybe, or Ray, Ethan couldn't tell, hauled him up onto the dock. The world tilted. He rolled onto his back, coughing up water, vision swimming. Rex scrambled up beside him, collapsing with a wet thump, chest heaving. His sides rose and fell in desperate, ragged gulps. He sneezed water, shook once, then turned his head to nose Ethan's face, whining softly. "Good boy," Ethan choked. Someone pressed down on his chest, checking for broken ribs. Lila's hands, he realized belatedly. The lantern behind her threw her features into soft, flickering relief, strong jaw, tired eyes, a smudge of something dark on her cheek. "You're out of your mind," she snapped, voice trembling. "Do you have any idea?" "The levee," he rasped. "Crawley. We know." Sheriff Ray's voice came from somewhere beyond his line of sight. "Save it for the recorder, Cole. Right now, I just need you alive." Ethan tried to sit up. Pain flared along his right side like fire. Lila pushed him back down gently but firmly. "You move, you bleed out. Stay down," she ordered. He let his head drop to the sodden wood. Above them, the sky ripped open again with lightning. The wind screamed. Somewhere, in the distance, a church bell rang, a long, desperate peal. Rex pressed his wet head into Ethan's shoulder like he was trying to push him back into his body. The last thing Ethan remembered before the darkness took him was that pressure and the faint, steady thump of the dog's heartbeat against his ribs. When consciousness came back, it did not come gently. Sound arrived first, beeping, low and steady. A hum, constant, almost like the inside of a generator. Wheels squeaking, voices muffled through walls. Then came smell, antiseptic, old coffee, the faint metallic tang of blood. Ethan opened his eyes to a ceiling the color of cheap printer paper. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A plastic curtain whispered somewhere near his feet. Hospital. He tried to sit up. Pain shot through his right side, hot and sharp. Something tugged in his arm, an IV line. A monitor at his bedside chirped faster. "Don't," a familiar voice said. "You'll rip your stitches." Lila appeared at his side, framed by the open doorway. Her hair was pulled back in a hasty knot. Dark circles smudged the skin beneath her eyes. She wore scrubs under a rain jacket, as if she hadn't had time to change. "You're supposed to be off shift," Ethan croaked. She snorted softly. "Yeah, well, Ivy didn't check my schedule." He swallowed. His throat felt like sandpaper. "How bad?" he asked. She checked the monitor, then his chart, then his face, in that order. "Couple cracked ribs, bruised lung. You swallowed half the bayou, could have been worse." He closed his eyes briefly. "The levee? Broke in 2 spots. Ray and the parish emergency team got most people to higher ground." Her voice tightened. "Some didn't get out in time." Guilt slammed into him, as heavy as any wave. "I tried to stop him," he whispered. "Crawley, We know," she said. "Ray pulled your body cam footage." "My what?" She reached into the drawer at his bedside and pulled out a small, battered device, the kind contractors used, clipped to overalls or vests. Ethan stared at it, blank. "I don't wear—" "You did last night," she said. "Sheriff found this clipped to your belt when they dragged you in. Said you mumbled something about proof before you passed out." His brain felt 3 steps behind his body. "I don't own one of those." "Ivy knocked the power out across half the parish," she said. When it flickered back this morning, the sheriff's office server lit up with a file request, encrypted, time-stamped 8 years ago, routed through 3 different accounts and labeled with one code, REX-07. The room seemed to tilt. Lila kept talking, her tone low, steady. Ray's tech guy almost fried the system, trying to pry it open. When he finally did, there it was, helmet cam footage from your unit in Fallujah. Audio, video, coordinates. You yelling about an unreported munitions cache. Contractors insisting it was a non-issue. Then something about a last-minute route change. The same company that just built our levee was stamped all over the contract. Ethan's muscles turned to stone. "The blast that took your team," Lila said softly, "wasn't bad luck. It was negligence. Somebody cut corners on munitions disposal and lied about it. Your file said you'd been unreliable after the fact. PTSD, grief. They made sure nobody listened." His heart hammered against the monitor leads. "How does a file like that show up now?" he asked, voice hoarse. Lila's eyes drifted toward the door. "You should ask him." Claws clicked on tile. Rex trotted into the room like he owned it, tail held level, ears forward. He wore a bright orange therapy dog vest that looked loned and too new on his damp fur. A leash hung slack in Jamie's small hand behind him. "Can he come in?" Jamie blurted before anyone could say no. "He cried when they took you away. He knows this place. He used to visit the clinic." Ethan couldn't speak. Rex padded straight to the bedside. Without hesitation, he lifted his front paws and set them gently on the mattress, careful of the wires. He lowered his head until his nose touched Ethan's bandaged ribs, then looked up, eyes steady. Lila smiled faintly. "Vet scanned his microchip this morning," she said. "Wanted to double-check his records." "Chip?" Ethan murmured. "Dog like this? Of course he's chipped," she said. "Standard rescue protocol, except his chip ID wasn't standard. It was tied to a dead military account. Same code as what came through the sheriff's system, REX07. Whoever set it up back then attached a trigger. First time that chip got scanned stateside and pinged your name, the file finally sent itself." Ethan stared at the dog. "Your teammate," Lila said softly. "The comm sergeant who died with your unit. He must have known somebody would try to bury what happened, stash the proof under the ID of the only living thing he knew would keep fighting to get back to you." Jamie edged closer, one hand still wrapped around the leash. "Mom says that's why he keeps sticking to you," the boy said, with the blunt certainty only 10-year-olds have. Like he had a mission, like he came home on purpose. Rex's tail swept once across the floor. His gaze didn't leave Ethan's. A lump rose in Ethan's throat. He swallowed hard. "All this time," he whispered, "I thought it was my fault. I thought I'd missed something. Lila laid a hand on his arm. "The people who should have listened didn't. That's on them, Ethan, not you." He let his eyes close, only for a second. The echo of the blast, the dust, the screams, all of it pressed against the inside of his skull. But this time, when he opened his eyes, they weren't alone. Rex's steady, unwavering stare met his. "Not your fault," those eyes seemed to say. "Not anymore." Jamie tugged the leash gently. "Can I?" he asked Lila. "Can I show him?" She nodded. The boy dug into the pocket of his damp hoodie and pulled out a folded laminated photo. He handed it to Ethan, fingers shaking with excitement. "I found this in Miss Clara's old paper," Jamie said. "She's the reporter. She was talking to Sheriff and Mom about the levee. She had this picture from before, from over there." The photo was grainy, taken in a desert so bright it nearly washed out the shapes. 3 soldiers squinted at the camera. One was unmistakably Ethan, younger, less worn. Another was a tall black man with a crooked grin. The third, kneeling between them, had his arms around a lean German shepherd, tongue lolling, ears high. The dog's vest read MW Rex Ezio 7. Ethan's grip on the photo tightened. "Looks like he's been saving people for a long time," Lila said quietly. Rex huffed, as if modesty bored him. Outside the window, beyond the parking lot, full of emergency vehicles and half-drowned sedans, Baybrier's flooded streets glinted under a gray, thinning sky. The storm had done its damage. What came next would be worse in some ways. The paperwork and politics and shouting matches on courthouse steps. "Crawley?" Ethan asked. "Under arrest," Lila answered. "So are his friends. The levee design that failed is tied directly to the same contractor from your file. State's already sending investigators. You won't have to shout this time. The evidence is doing it for you." He let the information sink in, each piece heavy but solid. "Why are you still here?" he asked her after a moment. "There are other patients. Most of them are stable." She shrugged lightly. "And the one who dragged my son's new favorite dog out of a death trap deserves someone to sit at his bedside and roll her eyes whenever he tries to be stoic." Ethan stared at her. "You weren't even on shift when they brought you in," she added. "You think I'm letting you off that easy?" Jamie's eyes widened. "Mom was yelling at the paramedics in the parking lot," he confided. "She said if they didn't stop using you like a crash test dummy, she was going to—" "Jamie," Lila warned. The boy clamped his mouth shut, grinning. For the first time since he woke up, a sound escaped Ethan that wasn't a groan. It was small, rusty, but unmistakable. A laugh. Rex's ears perked at the sound. His tail thumped again, this time steady, like a drum calling time. Months later, the scent of bayou mud still rose sharp whenever the wind shifted. But Bay Briar was standing. Houses closest to the breach bore high water lines like scars. Blue tarps patched roofs. Piles of ruined furniture sat at curbs, waiting for trucks that always came later than promised. The levee wore a new crown of reinforced concrete and fresh earth. State and federal inspectors had made a home of the parish courthouse. Mayor Crawley's face had disappeared from every billboard overnight, replaced with emergency hotlines and donation banners. In an empty lot that had once held a row of shotgun houses, a new structure was going up, long and low, built on pilings with wide doors and a training yard beyond. The temporary sign out front was hand-painted, the letters uneven but proud. Rex Resilience Center for Veterans, First Responders, and Rescue K-9s. Ethan stood in the half-finished main room, hands on his hips, staring at the stack of crates lined against one wall. The air smelled of fresh-cut lumber and sawdust. Sunlight slanted through a gap in the roof where a piece of tin still waited to be nailed down. "You're frowning," Lila observed, stepping up beside him. She carried a stack of charts under one arm, her scrubs replaced today with jeans and a t-shirt bearing the center's logo in rough stencil. "I'm thinking," he corrected. "Looks a lot like frowning," she teased. Rex trotted across the concrete floor, nails clicking, a bright blue ball clamped between his jaws. Jamie jogged behind him, a little taller now, hair longer, his laugh echoing off the bare walls. "Dad!" he called. "Race you!" The word slipped out without him seeming to notice. Ethan's heart stuttered. It still caught him off guard, that word. The first time Jamie had said it, he'd nearly dropped the toolbox he'd been carrying. Lila's hand brushed his. "You okay?" she murmured. "Yeah," he said softly. "Just living in an alternate universe, that's all." "You mean the one where you're helping design a place that helps other people climb out of the same holes you almost never came back from?" she asked. "Yeah, wild." He smiled crookedly. Rex dropped the ball at his feet. It rolled, bumped into Ethan's boot. The dog sat, tail sweeping dust. "Center's not open yet, you know," Ethan told him. "There's nobody to impress." Rex's eyes said plainly, "That's where you're wrong." On one side of the room, a row of kennels waited to be filled, not with strays chained under piers, but with working dogs being retrained from war to search and rescue. Another wing would hold therapy spaces for group sessions, job training, quiet rooms where veterans could sit with a dog, and the kind of silence that healed instead of hurt. Out back, the training yard stretched toward the bayou, high enough now that even an Ivy-level storm wouldn't reach it. A small dock jutted into the water, where Ray had promised to park a rescue skiff. "What about the sign?" Lila asked. "Eli says he'll have the real one carved by next week." Ethan pictured it in his mind, the carved wooden plaque they'd sketched on napkins during long planning meetings at McGinty's. A shepherd's silhouette, head high, beside the rough outline of a man's hand resting lightly on its neck. Underneath, the words they'd finally settled on after arguing through a dozen options. "We walk back through the water, so others don't have to drown alone." He cleared his throat. "It's good," he said. "It's right." Lila bumped his shoulder with her own. "You know Clarissa from the Chronicle is coming for the opening," she said. "She wants to write a follow-up, from Sabotage to Sanctuary, or something dramatic." "Tell her to focus on the dogs," Ethan said. "People are tired of my face." "You say that like your face isn't the reason half the parish ladies suddenly became experts in leash training," she snorted. He flushed. Jamie blew the whistle around his neck, off-key but enthusiastic. "Rex, search!" he shouted. The shepherd launched himself toward a row of practice barrels, nose low, tail high. Within seconds, he barked sharply, pawing at one. Jamie grinned and held up a treat. "Good boy!" the kid crowed. Lila's smile softened, watching them. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gone to the pier that night?" she asked quietly. Ethan's gaze followed Rex as he bounded back, ball in his mouth again, dripping joy across the dusty floor. "Sometimes," he said. "But then I remember something an old chaplain told me in Germany when I was trying hard not to listen." "What's that?" "That there are some missions you only get because you survived the first one." He shrugged. "I didn't understand it then. I think Rex did." Rex dropped the ball and pressed his head against Ethan's thigh like an amen. Outside, The bayou shimmered under a rare, clear sky. Pelicans drifted low over the water. The new levee line gleamed under its fresh coat of concrete. Ugly, maybe, but solid. "You think miracles are just accidents lined up in a row?" Lila asked after a moment. "Storms hitting at the wrong angle, files sending at the right second, dogs showing up exactly where they shouldn't be?" Ethan looked down at Rex. The dog's ears twitched, listening not just to his words, but to the space between them. "I think," Ethan said slowly, "if they are accidents, they're very specific ones." Lila slipped her hand into his. Her fingers were warm, calloused, real. "Come on, Mr. Cole," she said. "We've got people to train, a town to keep above water, and a dog who thinks he's underpaid." Rex woofed, as if to confirm. They stepped out into the sunlight together, man, woman, child, and dog. The air smelled of salt and sawdust, and something else Ethan hadn't recognized in a long time: possibility. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour, their notes clear and steady over a town that had come close to drowning, and decided collectively not to. Ethan paused on the threshold and looked back once more at the empty waiting space of the center. There was a time, not so long ago, when a room like that would have felt like a trap, too open, too bright, full of expectations he couldn't meet. Now, it felt like a promise. Rex nudged his hand, insistent. "Move." "All right," Ethan murmured. "Let's work, partner." They walked into their next mission. No explosions, no sirens. Just the sound of claws on concrete, the low murmur of human voices learning how to be honest about pain, and the quiet, stubborn heartbeat of a dog who had somehow found his way out of one war and into another, softer battle. The fight to prove that broken things could be built into shelter for others. And somewhere, in an office full of dusty hard drives and half-forgotten files, a long-queued message marked Rec-07 finally blinked out of its pending folder for good. Mission complete. The world moved on. But in Baybriar, on a levee that held, beside a bayou that remembered everything and forgave anyway, a man named Ethan Cole and a German shepherd named Rex kept walking their patrol, watching the water, watching the people, watching for the next soul drifting too close to the edge. Because sometimes miracles don't fall from the sky. Sometimes they swim in,